Most men think that silence equals strength, that if they just stop talking, she will feel their absence. But silence alone isn't power, it's just the lack of sound. True strength begins when silence is not a strategy, but a reflection of inner peace. The problem is, most men go quiet on the outside while screaming on the inside. They delete her number, unfollow her, even block her. But deep down, they're still checking her page through a friend's account, still wondering if she's thinking about them, still waiting for some invisible sign that she feels their absence. That isn't detachment, it's quiet obsession. It's trying to heal by hiding, not by changing. You can't trick your own emotions. You can't out-silence your attachment. When a man goes no contact without growth, his silence becomes a performance. Every moment of quiet is just another way of asking, "Do you miss me yet?" That's not peace. That's anxiety disguised as composure. She can feel it too. Not through your words, but through the invisible current of your energy. Women have a sense for these things. Even from a distance, they can feel when a man's silence is still tied to them. It's in the timing of his posts, the subtle shifts in his behavior, the tension behind his restraint. You can say nothing and still speak volumes if your mind is still chasing what's gone. True, no contact doesn't begin when you stop talking to her. It begins when you stop explaining yourself to the past. It's when you stop checking your phone, not because you're forcing yourself not to, but because you simply don't care to anymore. It's when you stop trying to be seen, stop trying to make her notice your absence, and start learning to find peace in your own presence. That's what separates waiting from transformation. Marcus Aurelius said, "You become what you give your attention to." And as long as your thoughts revolve around her, she still owns a piece of you. You've stopped texting her, but you haven't stopped feeding her power. Every replayed memory, every imagined conversation, every emotional reaction keeps her alive inside your mind. You have to cut that cord, not by fighting the thoughts, but by replacing them. Replace the need for attention with the pursuit of improvement. Replace the urge to reach out with the discipline to look inward. No contact isn't just about silence. It's about redirection. It's about using that space not to wait, but to evolve. Because no contact without evolution is just waiting with better manners. The moment you turn your energy inward, everything changes. The silence stops being punishment and becomes purification. You stop reacting and start reflecting. You stop waiting for her to notice and start noticing yourself again. That's when real detachment begins. Not when she feels your absence, but when you finally feel your own presence. That's the first step toward true peace. At first, silence feels uncomfortable. It feels like something's missing, like the world suddenly grew quiet, but your mind didn't get the message. You still wake up thinking of her. You still reach for your phone out of habit, half expecting her name to appear on the screen. Your mind replays moments like an endless loop. Her voice, her laugh, the last time you spoke. You tell yourself you're done, but part of you still waits for that text, still hopes for some kind of closure that will make the silence easier to bear. That's the hardest part. The beginning isn't peaceful, it's a detox. You're starving a pattern that once fed your emotions, and your mind will fight it. It will try to convince you that breaking the silence is harmless, that one message won't matter. But deep down, you know it's not about the message. It's about the power you give away every time you reach out. Silence begins as suffering, but it transforms into strength. Slowly, the space that once felt empty starts to feel full again. You start to notice things you ignored before. The quiet of the morning, the sound of your own breathing, the calm that comes when you stop reacting to everything. You start to see how much of your peace you had tied to her attention. You realize that every moment you spent waiting for her response was a moment you could have spent building yourself. That's when the shift begins. The silence stops being about her and starts becoming about you. It turns from punishment into practice. It becomes the space where you begin to rebuild your focus, your confidence, your direction. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." When you finally retreat into yourself, you discover what peace actually means. It's not about removing noise. It's about removing dependency. You start to feel grounded again. You stop chasing her validation and begin chasing your purpose. You start to fill your days with things that make you grow instead of things that make you ache. The gym, your work, your craft, they become the new language of your silence. You no longer wait for her to reach out because you're too busy reaching higher. And something subtle happens when that transformation begins. Your energy changes. It stops orbiting her and begins orbiting your goals. Your thoughts become sharper, your emotions calmer. The silence that once felt unbearable now becomes sacred. It's no longer the space between two people. It's the space where you meet yourself again. She can sense it too. The same woman who once felt your energy constantly chasing her now feels the void it left behind. Women don't miss your words. They miss your focus, your consistency, your attention. When you stop giving those things away, they start to wonder where that power went. The truth is, it came home, to you. The silence that once weakened you now strengthens you. You stop asking if she'll ever come back because you finally realize you no longer need her to. When a man truly detaches, something in the air changes. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's subtle, like a shift in gravity. The energy that once chased now moves inward, and that shift is felt even from miles away. At first she doesn't notice. She assumes your silence is temporary, another act in the same emotional play you've both repeated before. She believes you're still watching, still waiting, still orbiting around her life like a planet that can't break free from its sun. But weeks pass and the quiet stays. No story views, no subtle likes, no coded posts that could be interpreted as messages, nothing, just stillness. That's when the confusion begins. Because people expect attention, and when it suddenly disappears, the ego starts to itch. She begins to ask herself questions she never asked before. Did he move on? Did he stop caring? Or worse, did he evolve beyond me? Silence, when it's real, acts like a mirror. It reflects everything a person once took for granted. She begins to remember how much of her validation used to come from your consistency, how much comfort she used to draw from your energy being available. She may not admit it, but your absence disrupts her rhythm. What she once dismissed as predictable now feels like stability she lost. Epictetus said, "If you wish to be loved, love yourself first." That's exactly what you've done. You've redirected all the energy you once gave her back into yourself. You're not ignoring her. You're investing in your peace. You stop checking her page not because you're trying to prove something, but because your attention is too valuable to waste. You no longer need to broadcast your pain or your progress. You let your growth speak quietly for you. You stop explaining yourself to people who never truly listened. Instead, you learn to speak the language of stillness. It's not about saying less to manipulate. It's about saying nothing because peace has no explanation. You've become a man who disappears not out of anger, but out of alignment. You no longer need closure because you've closed the chapter within yourself, and she feels it. The stillness unsettles her. Your detachment becomes magnetic. She starts thinking about you, not from longing, but from curiosity. She wonders who you've become in that silence. Because when a man truly detaches, he becomes unpredictable. He stops existing in her emotional control. That's when your absence starts to echo louder than your presence ever did. Your silence, once seen as weakness, becomes the loudest form of strength. Peace is rare, and in a world addicted to attention, it's intoxicating. Your calm becomes her confusion. Your discipline becomes her curiosity. The man who once needed her energy now stands still within his own. And that stillness radiates something powerful, mystery. The kind of mystery that can't be ignored because it's not built on games, but on growth. You've stopped chasing, stopped proving, stopped needing. And that's the moment the tables turn. The silence that once hurt you now haunts her. And then one day it happens, the test, the message, the moment you've unknowingly been preparing for. Her name flashes across your screen, and for a split second, you feel that old rush in your chest. It's brief but familiar, like a ghost from another life. "Hey, how have you been?" Simple words, harmless on the surface, but you know better now. You've seen this pattern before. It's not really curiosity. It's not really care. It's control, an attempt to see if your silence was real or just another act of pride. Most men fail this test. They take the bait, reply too quickly, reveal too much. They mistake her curiosity for connection and end up right back in the emotional maze they worked so hard to escape. But not you, because now silence isn't your weapon. It's your nature. You've learned the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is emotion. Responding is awareness. You look at her message and you don't feel the same pull you once did. You don't feel that familiar anxiety to prove you're okay. You don't need to show you've changed. You already know you have. That's the power of detachment. It gives you the ability to see things as they are, not as your feelings wish them to be. Her message isn't an opportunity. It's information. It's proof that she's noticing the void you left behind. The silence she once dismissed now whispers louder than any words could. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." You wasted enough time waiting for closure that never came, chasing conversations that went nowhere, hoping for validation that only weakened you. You've learned the value of doing nothing. Sometimes the most powerful action is restraint. You don't reply instantly. You let the moment pass. You let the message sit. Because you're not driven by impulse anymore. You're guided by clarity. Maybe, days later, you decide to respond, but not from emotion, from control. Your words are calm, grounded, minimal. You no longer seek connection. You demonstrate composure. You're not trying to reignite anything. You're showing, without saying it, that the fire no longer burns you. That's what true power looks like, not in how loud you are, but in how little you need to say. Your silence no longer signals longing. It signals freedom, and that freedom changes everything. She feels it in the space between your words, in the tone that doesn't chase, in the calm that doesn't explain. You've become unreadable, unpredictable, untouchable. The man she once could trigger with a single text now feels distant, grounded, and complete. And that unsettles her more than any silence ever could, because your calm now exposes her chaos. The emotional leash she once held has vanished. You've learned the art of stillness, not as a trick, but as truth. Your detachment isn't revenge, it's rebirth. And in that rebirth, you've mastered something most never do, the power to do nothing and mean it. There comes a morning when you wake up, and for the first time in a long while, she isn't the first thought that crosses your mind. The silence that once felt heavy now feels clean, calm, even sacred. You move through your day differently, not searching, not checking, not hoping. You're simply living. What once felt like a loss has turned into clarity. The noise of longing has faded into focus. You begin to see how every sleepless night, every unanswered message, every ounce of pain was never punishment. It was preparation. It was shaping you, sharpening you, building a version of yourself that no longer breaks under emotion. The man who once craved validation has become the man who creates his own peace. You start to channel the energy you once poured into her into everything you do. The gym becomes therapy. Your goals become your conversation. Your purpose becomes your comfort. You stop fighting for someone to see your worth and start building it where it always belonged, within yourself. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." That's what you've done. You stopped talking about growth and started embodying it. You stopped waiting for life to fix itself and started mastering it through discipline. Every time you chose silence over reaction, every time you chose focus over obsession, you forged character. And character is the one thing no heartbreak can take from you. There's a stillness that lives inside men who've walked through emotional fire and refused to burn. That stillness becomes your signature. People can feel it when you enter a room. You don't have to say much anymore. Your energy speaks. It carries weight. Not because you seek attention, but because you no longer need it. You've become the rarest thing in a noisy world, a man who moves without announcing, a man who doesn't beg to be seen but can't be ignored. The same woman who once dismissed your presence now senses it everywhere. She feels the difference but can't define it, because peace has no shape. It simply radiates, and yet you don't smile out of revenge. You don't wait for her regret. You've outgrown the need to win. The real victory was never about making her miss you. It was about realizing you no longer miss yourself. You found him again, the man beneath the emotion, the one who leads himself with reason, not reaction. You've learned that strength isn't in holding on, it's in knowing when to let go without bitterness. You no longer chase. You attract. You no longer need. You choose. And in that shift, you've discovered the highest form of freedom. Indifference. Because indifference isn't coldness, it's mastery. It's the quiet confidence of knowing that nothing outside you can disturb what you've built within. You no longer need to prove peace. You've become it. That's the silent ascension, the transformation that begins in heartbreak and ends in power. You are no longer waiting for closure, for understanding, or for validation. You are beyond it. You are unshakable.